Let me get this set up. Sorry. You know what? One of those days, like I said. Let's see how this goes. My name is Michael Manzano, and I'm with Career Connection at Bow Valley College. And we've been doing these webinars throughout April, and I guess we're into May now. Hey, Jeff, quickly, yesterday, happy May the 4th. I know you're a Star Wars guy. So, you know what? We've been doing these throughout the past month, and the whole idea behind the webinar series is to give you guys the skills, to connect you with community leaders and organizations throughout the city, throughout the province, and be able to help you guys grow in those skills, especially during these times, because it is really strange out there. It can get really crazy, but you know what? We're here today. We're gonna try to have fun. We're gonna try to learn lots. So a couple of ground rules. I'm gonna mute everybody. We're gonna turn off everybody's microphone just so that we don't get like that kind of feedback, that background noise, and then we might not know whose microphone that is. Today is gonna be a Q&A style. I'm going to be talking with Jeff Boyle here, but everybody, I want you guys to have fun. If you do have questions, feel free to jump in. You know, put up your hand on the chat box here or something. Put in your questions in the chat box, and then I'll be able to bring those up. So if anything does come up, something you are wondering about, then definitely let's join in. Let's have some fun. Everybody's welcome to have those questions and bring them in here. So, you know what? Everyone's got those different kinds of tips and tricks for job searching, but it's especially tricky these days when you can't go out and you can't meet people face to face, or even like drop off resumes and do like that different kind of research. So now you have to be a little more creative, a little more persistent. So today we've got Jeff Boyle. He is the VP of Business Development and Marketing at Vintri Technologies, which has had a wild ride in the startup world this past while. So Jeff is also a seasoned, he's got a recruitment background, but he's sorry, Jeff, how did you describe yourself? A hiring manager with a recruitment background, is that right?
Yeah, so business development executive, and I spent almost a decade in the recruitment industry. So I got to see it from the recruitment side as well as selling those services to a lot of different companies in the Calgary area.
Yeah, why don't we jump on in here? So you know what the first question usually is in an interview. Tell me about yourself, right? So why don't we jump in? Let's go in and say, hey, Jeff Boyle, tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm born and raised in Calgary, and I went to Mount Royal. I did the applied bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship and small business. It was a really interesting degree in that I actually got to start two of my own businesses while I did that. So one of them was a construction company. The other one was a water sport company on Shuswap Lake. I'm still very thankful that those instructors allowed me to convince them that that was a real business that I ran and got a grade for. So after that, came back and worked in a couple jobs before settling into recruitment. Like I said, did that for a decade, and now for the last just under 4 years, I've been heading up the sales and the product development of a software solution for the oil and gas industry here in Calgary, and I've got a team now in Calgary and Houston. On the personal side, I volunteer with the Calgary Stampede, and I also have a wonderful family. So I've got a 2-month-old little boy. I've got a 3-year-old little guy, the most amazing wife possible that some of you may have met in previous webinars. And I tell Michael all the time, I married Superwoman. So she's also an executive and a board director. So we have a lot of fun. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
No, that's awesome. You sound like you're keeping very, very busy. And yeah, if you guys were able to make it to that last webinar with Kirsty Boyle, they are related. They are husband and wife. They are that super couple. So he married Superwoman, but she married Superman. Right, Jeff?
No, it's a privilege to marry up. So it's and then the fun part is, if anyone's looked up Vintri Technologies, you'll see that Brendan Boyle is the founder and CEO. There's actually no relation there. So when I interviewed just under 4 years ago, I asked if I was going to have to change my name. but luckily, nope. But for those that know us, his wife is named Kirsten. So Kirsten,
Wow.
Brendan Boyle, Jeff Boyle, Kirsty Boyle. For some of our colleagues, it's good and confusing for them.
That's kind of like bizarro world going on there. But you've got this great background in recruitment, so this is what you used to do. And
Mhm.
with all the crazy stuff going on right now, have you ever seen anything like what we're going through right now in recruitment or in HR and in hiring?
For me personally, I've never had this many headwinds facing the industry and facing the organizations, all piling together. Because we've got COVID, but we've also got the oil crash. Then we've also got the fact that many of the regular employers in Calgary have been facing one or many headwinds for essentially 5 years straight. So I have some comparables. I started selling and recruiting recruitment services in 0809 and saw a lot of phone calls hung up and a lot of um, left messages. A lot of people even would laugh and say, "Are you seriously trying to sell staffing services right now in this economy?" I went through the 2013 floods, where I mean we had thousands of people off work for a short period of time, so it was a much smaller window. But then it also created opportunity for all the jobs to do the cleanup. Um, and then when I was still in staffing in 14 and 15, that slowed down and that started the recession. That was a little bit more controlled. That was a lot of organizations reaching out and asking for their contractors, well, not asking, but letting their contractors know that they were going to have to take a pay cut to stay on. So definitely been through some ups and downs. This one, I mean, this one's quite unique.
Yeah, like I do remember I did start in career coaching back in 2009, 2010, and that was an interesting year. That was pretty tough. But you do learn a lot and you are able to be really resilient. You got to learn how to be resilient. And that's what lots of companies have to do these days. So, I mean, what kinds of differences have you seen with businesses in kind of like their operations or even in their hiring practices because of all this COVID stuff?
So for us, I mean, we're very fortunate. We're still able to grow in these times. So we brought on two new members right before um, the isolation started. So we had to experience onboarding them remotely. We then brought on another two members in Houston remotely, and we've well, I've never actually even met one of my employees in that situation. So the other one I met just briefly in the initial screening phase in February. So for for adapting it all, we've had to look at what positions do we critically need right now? What positions are we going to hold off uh, to make sure that we can bring them on once we have a little bit more of an office setting and an ability to onboard those individuals properly, because it's great to create jobs and positions, especially in these times. But at the same time, you don't want to bring someone in that is set up for failure because they're not onboarded properly. So really looking at all of our positions and figuring out what can we still properly onboard. Can we set these individuals up for success by bringing them on right now, and will they be able to get the training they're looking for? Um, the reason why that onboarding is not just as simple as, hey, let's go digital, is we've actually found that most of our team is busier than we've ever been because there's so many more meetings. There's individual video calls with each client that can go back to back, and many of our leadership team will face a day of 6-7 hours of straight video calls. So there's not even time to really jump in and check your emails. I've learned, I didn't realize how much I got done walking 15 minutes from one meeting to the next in the plus 15s and corresponding on text, Slack messages, or emails. But that 15-minute window is gone because 9 times out of 10 now we're hitting end on a Zoom meeting and clicking start on the Teams meeting. So it's quite a different world. For positions and candidates, um, I'm not in that world, but I can see that more and more are starting to get really creative. I get a lot of our general messages coming in through the email, and there's a lot of creativity starting to pop up.
Wow, what kinds of creative things have you seen?
So there's individuals that I actually don't realize that they're applying for a position right away. They actually approach their email and their message as if they're selling the services. And really, when you think about it, a lot of time of a job hunt, you are selling yourself, right? So they're approaching it as um, they're almost selling like Jeff Boyle Inc. And they're coming in from that approach. And if they know they really fit a skill set, or they know they have a transferable situation, transferable skills, then they're showing some way of putting that at the forefront. They're not just submitting a resume and hoping that there's an off chance a hiring manager is going to pick it up and read it.
And I like what you said there, selling Jeff Boyle Inc. and kind of seeing yourself as a business. We did talk a little bit about branding yourself in your job search yesterday. So being able to do that is really important. Now, Vintri Technologies has had quite a ride. It's one of those up and coming companies, and it's been amazing. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your guys' history and where you see yourselves in maybe next year or so?
Okay. So yeah, Vintri Technologies is labeled right now more as an emerging technology company here in Calgary. There's at some point where you're not allowed to call yourself a startup anymore. We've been in existence for 8 years. Now, the product we are currently bringing to market was launched in November of 2019. So while the company has existed in different versions and with different products previously, it was about 2 years ago that we really started to focus on Vintri. Right now, all of our solutions bring quality assurance, a QA, QC to the data that exists within the energy industry. So I'm very fortunate. I get to work with a team of individuals that come from all different industries, and we all bring a really nice blend of experience and transferable skills. But essentially, we're looking to help the oil and gas industry on their digital transformation journey. So a big part that sometimes gets overlooked on that journey is that, I mean, machine learning, AI, all that stuff is amazing. But if you can't feed it clean data, then you're going to have a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So what Vintri does today is we partner with oil and gas operators. We help them with their entire supply chain, and our software and our proprietary platform allows them to actually digitally inspect all of their data coming in from their manufacturing phase, coming in from their construction phase, and ensure that they have good, clean, usable data that they then transfer over to operations and other groups within the organization.
And that's good. I like how you said good, clean data, because you get lots of junk data out there. I mean, if anybody's been in data analytics, you know that there can be a lot of jumbled up numbers. So being able to make that nice and clean, that's very important. And being able to see that opportunity, that's always important too. So not just in business, but also in your job search, seeing those kinds of opportunities and jumping on those. So I'm glad to see that Vintri is doing so well. But you guys were also part of that Tech West collective the other day. Now, I do remember they did have kind of like a first group of hiring events last year. I think it was in November, end of October, sometime around there. And that was insane. There were, I think, 6 companies just in Calgary, all tech companies. And they saw, I think, what I heard, the end numbers were over 2,500 people in one afternoon that were looking for jobs with these six companies. Now, how was it this time around? This being everything was online and a different six companies or a different group of companies. How was it for you guys?
I mean, it was good. We got to share the fact that, I mean, we were by far the smallest company of the six. So it was great exposure for us to be able to make sure that people in the industry knew that we were hiring. We were not hiring at the scale of the other companies, or we are hiring, I should say. But we got to put the message out there. And I mean, I can't speak to then versus now. We learned about the Tech West Collective, I think, 24 hours before that session you're talking about, and I reached out to points of contact and said, "Hey, can we be a part of this?" It just was too last minute for us to join, so then we joined up to be part of the next wave. So, anyways, we're the smallest company there, but we got to share a message, and our message is that a lot of companies are looking for a specific person to come from uh, a role that they were in that matches the role they're going to. Vintri has a different story. We have data scientists and data analysts that were geologists, that were field operators. Our BD team has an individual that was a electrical engineer before Vintri being their first BD role. The head of our quality assurance and delivery team actually came from the environmental side, where she would create analysis processes for I'm going to mess this up, but essentially like environmental samples. So she took all of those thoughts and processes and applied that to how we would analyze and write out the algorithms to test energy data. So steel and pipes and fittings and so forth. So we're just a very fortunate blend of individuals that knew that the other industries outside of oil and gas were doing good things about material traceability and material data. And we put together a team that doesn't exactly have the exact experience of the position we're hiring for, but they've got transferable skills. And I think that was something that stood out in the Tech West Collective. At least I know it did from individuals that wrote to us afterwards. A few people mixed me up with Brendan Boyle, so they wrote to me saying, "Hey, you were great on that webinar," and I'm like, "I wasn't there," but it was really good messages, right? It was individuals that talked about the fact that they've been looking for a way to transfer from either an engineering or oil and gas position into a technology position, and they didn't have any use cases of it actually happening, or not many use cases or examples, I should say, of it happening. So we got a lot of really good feedback on just sharing that story, and how individuals in these times just appreciated that that opportunity actually does exist. We're not coming out to the market with hundreds and hundreds of roles, so of course we're not able to help everyone, but we're hoping that every time we have new positions, that individuals know that we're open to those transferable skills.
Oh, that's great. It's always great to hear that companies are still hiring out there. It is easy to think, Calgary is pretty much shut down. My job search shut down. But I'm glad to hear that there is still lots of companies hiring. Maybe not to the same scale as they were a couple months ago, but they are still hiring. And like one of your company there, it's still growing, right? And that's the amazing thing about Calgary. We are a resilient city. So
Yeah.
that's so awesome. Now, you did talk about how you do hire, or you have hired some people that have kind of like a different background from what you hired them for. And that's pretty cool. And do you see that kind of as a trend for coming up, like people who are doing lots of career transitions, or what kinds of other trends do you see in job searching these days?
So kind of two parts. So I do see that as a small trend. There are a lot of companies that are finally experiencing the benefits and see the value of being more inclusive of individuals that have different backgrounds, and how that different background can actually benefit their team and broaden their team's perspective. I mean, talking back to the recruitment experience, I mean, I spent a decade where the recruitment world is pretty specific, at least on the like high frequent contracts or the headhunting side, that the only way a company is going to pay an agency their fees is if they get them exactly what they're looking for. So they're looking for someone that was in that role previously with 5 to 10 years, depending on the experience, with this. Like there's a full checklist made, right? And if you're going to incur those agency fees, you don't really look for someone transferable. You're not willing to seek out those transferable skills. Now there are some amazing firms and agencies in Calgary and in other locations that the recruiters do build a real relationship with their candidates, and they are able to speak to their customers and their clients that they have partnered with, and show that transferable skill set, and show that a person might be a great culture fit but not have the exact experience. But that's much more rare. Usually the recruitment industry is, I have a square peg, I have to fit it with a square peg. And it's really unfortunate. So I don't miss that part at all about that industry. The second part of like, what trends am I seeing? There's two things there. So even though Calgary downtown before COVID felt a little bit like a ghost town, some buildings completely empty, there still was always a need for developers. So there's been a shortage of strong developer talent in Calgary for quite some time. We've employed many different agencies to look for developers with our specific stack experience, and probably 5 minutes into the conversation for the last 2 years, they're like, can we look at Vancouver and Toronto? Are you willing to look at candidates outside of Calgary? We work remote for our dev team, so we're able to explore that. But that has been the case for a couple of years. And even Tech West Collective last week, I mean, everyone is looking for developers. I saw the posting rank, and I mean, some people might have been a little bit frustrated with it, but it was essentially like 4 or 5 positions just reworded 20 times. So there is little nuances, of course, in the dev positions, but realistically, there's a lot of postings and a lot of titles that were just one word different than the other. So there's a big need for that, but there's also a need for the complementary operational and business development and marketing positions that help those dev companies, those software solutions grow.
Yeah, and I like how you brought both those in. I mean, if people aren't developers, then what kinds of other jobs can they look into if they want to get into, let's say, the technology industry? I mean, you did bring up like some marketing. You do business development. What other things would you suggest to people?
Yeah, so there's the marketing side, there's the business development side. I mean, if you're not an extrovert and business development isn't something that you'd be passionate about, I would really tell people and advise people to just figure out what they are passionate about. Are they process oriented? If they're very process oriented, then there might be project coordinator roles or account management roles or account lead roles where they need to be very detail oriented, they need to be process oriented, they need to make sure that an enterprise contract is being implemented and managed properly. So what's your main foundation of skill sets, and how does that fit into positions? I had sent you a note that if there's one thing that I can give individuals looking for a job right now advice on, it's when someone asks you what you're looking for, have an answer for that. In a decade of recruitment and 6 to 7 years of being a hiring manager, the worst answer you can possibly give someone is, "Oh, I'm looking for anything." Um, it might be true because of your situation, but from a hiring perspective, we're looking for people that are actually seeking a role that fits within our organization, not looking for people that will take the position for now because it seems good enough, or it's something, right? And unfortunately, when you say you're willing to do anything or you're just looking for anything, that's where most hiring managers, either that I used to support or being a hiring manager, where my mind goes to is, well, what are you actually looking for? Because we want to pair our positions and our team with individuals that are seeking something like what we're doing.
Yeah, and it is very, very important to know what you're looking for. I've had quite a few clients that come up to me and then I ask them, well, what are you looking for? And they say anything. And I go, great, perfect. So I've got a company who's looking for someone to scrub toilets all day, or someone who's looking to get you to sell women's shoes. And right away they say, no, I don't want to do that. And the next question is, well, so what are you looking for then? So you really need to know what kinds of things you're looking for. I mean, even just bringing it down, like how specific do you think people should be getting?
That's a great point. I was going to follow up with that. Is you don't have to say you're only looking for one specific position, but a category or an area, or a, like, you don't have to say I'm looking for a business development position. You can say, or a marketing position. You can say I'm looking for a position that allows me to leverage what skill sets I have in this, this, and this, as well as give me experience in this. And I'm looking for an opportunity where I can work with this kind of technology or gain experience in this. Like, you don't have to say, I'm only looking for a business analyst role that does this, this, and this. Like that, to your point, sorry, bad answer, but just be somewhat specific, but not too specific.
Yeah, I mean, have a general idea so that you can go with something. It's always bad if you go in there not knowing what you want at all, right? People don't like doing extra legwork for you, right? Don't take up too much of their time. So even just thinking, well, maybe I could help them go into this. That's extra work that they don't want to do, especially, let's say, for example, at a job fair or even as a hiring manager, they're seeing like hundreds of resumes, meeting hundreds of people. They don't have that time to think, okay, this person, yeah, maybe they can do this. They don't want to do that extra legwork when they can easily just pick up the next resume and say, hey, this person's looking exactly for this. I can fill it with this. So make sure that you know, or you have a general idea of what kinds of things you're looking for. Now, another thing with the tech industry and sort of like the different positions there, not specifically developer positions, but those supporting roles, people think that because it's tech, they need to know some kind of tech language or be able to program even just a little. Now, how true is that?
um, I guess every company is different. For us, I know on our data roles, we don't look for any language, any coding experience. It's purely, did they answer what we asked for within the posting, and then they get sent a attention to detail kind of quiz, a test, and it's literally something that we found on Indeed, and it comes back with a quick assessment of how much attention to detail do they have, and it allows us to put them on to the next stage where they actually get a work assignment within, it's actually just within Excel. And therefore then they come back and they don't just do the work, they have to show their work, they have to explain their process of how they went about doing it. And that's what we hire off. That's the way we've been able to figure out transferable skills. So individuals on our team, their resume didn't scream anything specific to us that made us put it out to them. For the most part, myself and one other hiring manager were very specific. you have to include a cover letter of why you want to work at Vintri. And you would be surprised. I will, on an average posting, I'll probably get 300 responses and maybe 10% have a cover letter on them. And I put it in
Wow.
bold. I put it in bold, big bold letters that candidates that do not submit a cover letter specific to my questions will not be considered. And maybe 10% follow that. And I get it. There's a lot of feelings that you've got to just put out as many chances, and you've got to reach out to as many employers as possible. So custom writing a cover letter for every single posting. I know that there's recruiters out there that say don't write a cover letter. It's a waste of time. No one reads it. So I know everyone has a different opinion on this, but I can tell you when a posting says include a cover letter specifically to why you would be passionate to sell or to represent Vintri Technologies, you need to do a cover letter, and you need to not just copy and paste a generic cover letter. You need to research the company. You need to specifically figure out, is this a company you would want to be a part of? Is it a brand that you'd be proud to tell your friends and family about? And what we're, like for us specifically, what we're doing for the industry, how we're trying to make the industry safer and more advanced on the technological side. So yeah, sorry, I think I went a little bit off your question there.
No, you're good. So, I mean, one thing that you guys want to make sure that you do for each job posting is read the entire job posting. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know how many times I've seen, like, you need to have this one requirement, and then people don't put that in their resume, or they don't put it in their application because they didn't read the entire job posting, or else they just glanced at it and they said, oh, it's just like all the other ones. So make sure you read the job posting. I guess with cover letters, for me, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I would always err on the side of caution. If it doesn't say anything about a cover letter, just put in a cover letter anyways. I mean, depending on how long it takes you to make one, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but it could take you to that next level in the application process for that extra 30 minutes, extra hour. So err on the side of caution with cover letters. Now, I want to move into job fairs again. Tomorrow
Okay.
we have our virtual job fair. So Career Boost is happening tomorrow. We do have a handful of employers who are going to be there, and they are hiring as well. So how can people, I mean, most of these people are probably going to this is going to be their first virtual job fair. How can people make that kind of connection online or digitally that, that they can't make, or that they would make in person? So how do they do that online at a digital job fair?
Um, I can only speak to me personally. What stands out to me, virtual or non-virtual job fair, is I'm always very impressed with people that have done their homework. So the best advice I ever received a very long time ago was that when you're looking for a job, you should actually treat that as your full-time job. So if you're setting up for a job fair, you should try to dedicate a full day's work to set yourself up for success for that. Like, you should spend 6 to 8 hours researching those companies and having bullet points written down for each of those companies, so that you can show that hiring manager that A, you've looked them up, B, you have strategic questions to ask them, and you have genuine interest in them. The non-virtual job fairs, the thing that I always disliked the most was when people would just walk by and just be like, oh, tell me about your company. And I mean, of course, you have a little bit of a general conversation there, but that person is already starting 2 steps back, because the person that walked straight up to me and said, I've looked up Vintri Technologies, I've looked up all 20 employees on LinkedIn. I see that you hire from all different industries and backgrounds. I see that on Indeed you had these 4 postings. Will you have an opening in this area coming soon? That person, without handing me a resume, without me even knowing their name, is instantly triggering 10 different alarms in my head going, okay, I don't know if we're going to be hiring a position in that, but I'm going to get their information and I'm going to remember to have them followed up with. So that's my biggest thing is show that you're prepared, show that you're interested in the company through your questions, um, through your targeted questions, I guess is what I would suggest.
And it's always important to do your research. Now, you did mention just kind of in there, I've researched and looked up everyone on LinkedIn, all 20 people. Now, where's that fine line where it's research and then it becomes a little too creepy?
I mean, every hiring manager is going to be a little bit different, so there's no set rule there. Um, I can I'm probably on one end of the spectrum that from coming from a recruitment background, I don't think I think it's homework. I think it's research. So I can give an example of one of my employees right now. She looked every one of us up on LinkedIn, searched each of us, found a mutual connection that she had, reached out to that person, then phoned that person, then emailed that person, asked them and followed up with them to make sure that they would reach out to me and give them a recommendation of a person that we should take a real look at, and then followed up with that person to make sure that person had actually reached out and completed that referral. So she now works at Vintri Technologies. She has zero business development experience, and she's in our business development group because that's what business development is. It's reaching out, researching the company, and finding a way to get your foot in the door. She did that. I didn't really need to see the resume after that because I was like, well, you got your foot in the door here, you can get your foot in the door at other companies. So that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, and it's just finding those different ways to stand out. So let's say that these days you are coaching a job seeker. What would you tell them on how to stand out and what they should be doing in their whole job seeking process?
So step one, your resume and cover letter, you should think of them as marketing. So I'm not saying hire a graphic designer to go all out on it, but I am saying make sure it's a nice, clean resume that specifically articulates where your skill sets are and what you're looking for. Um, I'm not trying to offend any recruiters out there, but um, coming from that industry, a lot of recruitment is either they're overwhelmed with candidates. So that's a nice way of saying it. But then there's also some recruiters that are quite lazy. And unless you essentially jump off the page as hitting their top 3 to 5 requirements, it's very hard. You're not going to get someone that's going to read paragraphs and try to pull out different items of like, oh, well, that's kind of transferable. That's kind of transferable. To your point of err on the caution of cover letters, if you're not going to change your resume for each job posting that you put out there, your cover letter can have a section of bullets that specifically list the requirement that the company's looking for and how you meet that and in what way you meet that. Those are just simple bullets and something that can actually, you're almost doing the work for the recruiter. You're helping them out as much as possible, especially if they've got a posting that they're going to get inundated. You've got to find ways for you to stand out and helping them make those connections. That is something, again, back to the marketing. Certain positions need more attention to the marketing. So we've got a posting right now for a UI UX developer. The amount of resumes that have come in that are actually quite unreadable and not visually pleasing kind of surprised us, because these are individuals that seem to have some good experience, but they're not making the connection that if they can't make a resume user friendly and easy to read, why would we think they can make a web page that's easy to read? So there's a lot of different connections there. And then there's a lot of good templates out there. I think the one that the last time I bought one, it was maybe $7. I was very, very happy with it because it made everything stand out, and it made the resume pop.
Yeah, no, I like what you bring up there. You know, you got to think about your market, who you're talking to. You got to think about who's going to be looking at your resume and what you're applying for. So if you're a UI UX designer, you'd better have design skills. So you got to show that. If you're a data person, then you'd better talk about numbers, right? So having knowing what's special for you and what you're applying for, you got to be able to show that in your resume and your cover letter. Now, I mean, if anybody does have any questions, and feel free to pop it into the group chat here, and then I can definitely ask Jeff. But Jeff, I mean, let's talk about LinkedIn quickly. What are your tips for LinkedIn? I mean, how does somebody connect with that person, with like a hiring manager, with somebody who can help them maybe potentially with finding a job?
Um, Again, every individual is a little bit different, but I can speak to what messages I receive and that I accept. So I probably get six requests a day. That's about it. Yeah, I'd say that's my average. And if the person is very straightforward and gets to the point very quickly, and they don't try to they don't try to pitch something else, or they don't say, "Oh, I'm just looking to generally connect." Um, then I'll consider them. If they're saying, "I want to connect because I want to talk to you about this, and I want to see if there's an opportunity for this in the future," I will connect with them. I'll let them then message me their pitch and go from there. And if their pitch is succinct and sharp, I'll even give them feedback on how I would help them, or if they have a chance at Vintri maybe at a different time, because maybe we're not at the size or scale of requiring their kind of services. But the thing that I really don't like is the generic copy and paste, right? Um, if you're selling yourself and you're trying to connect yourself, for me, what's important in my brand is credibility, genuine, and actually not trying to waste people's time. So um, if you come across and you're just open and honest of this is what I'm looking for, or I'm wondering if you are able to help me with this, like ask a question, ask for help kind of thing. I'm wondering if you can point me in the direction of the hiring manager for this position, because it seems really interesting and I want to stand out instead of just applying on Indeed. That is a person that I would connect with, and then say, okay, the hiring manager is this person. Send me an email, and I will forward it to that hiring manager. And I've done that before, but just a real clear snapshot there. Also apply through the job posting. I think that's just one key tip that some people don't do. They only apply to like our info at vintritech.com, and that's not a good move. They should apply to the posting and then utilize like a generic email to try to stand out. Not use the generic emails as their primary, because some of those just literally go into spam folders.
Interesting. So then you're saying, like, for example, apply on LinkedIn and then go onto the website and apply again. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I would apply to the posting first, and then I would, like, right now, if I was job searching, I would apply to the job posting. I would make sure I specifically hit the points that the job posting is looking for. Then I would go and try to figure out the hiring manager, and depending on what emails are online, try to figure out how their emails are set up so that you can take a stab at emailing that person. I'd also potentially look at their general email to see if you can put in hello. can this please be forwarded to the hiring manager for this position? I've also applied on Indeed, but I want to make sure that my profile is seen because I believe I am a strong fit for X, Y, and Z reasons. That, depending on who that pops up to, could get forwarded to the hiring manager. That might make that candidate resonate more when they're going through the hundreds of applications on Indeed.
Yeah, and then you use whatever you can to stand out, right? Stand out in a positive way. But if
Yeah.
does anybody have any other questions, or does anybody have questions? Just pop them into the chat box. Sorry, Jeff, you're going to say something quickly.
Well, I want to preface, like, qualify it with, I come from 15 years of business development, so I understand that everything I'm saying is on one end of the spectrum of borderline a little bit aggressive. So everything should be taken with a grain of salt, in that you got to do what you're comfortable with and come back to the genuine. If you're not genuinely that kind of person that would be that forward, don't do it, because it won't come across like the way you want it to, right? I'm just throwing a lot of stuff out there so that maybe you pick up one or two things and add that to your arsenal.
And definitely, I'm glad that you brought that up. And it's always good to get different opinions, get these different styles, right? And use what fits best with you, but also at the same time, use what fits best with the person that you're trying to connect with, right? Maybe someone does like that aggressive style. Maybe they might find this a little too aggressive. So doing your research and kind of knowing, maybe testing out little things and seeing what works, that's when you're going to find that connection. But definitely be genuine, as Jeff said. That genuineness is always going to help you, and it's going to stand out. So we've got a couple of questions here. We got Julio asking, what skills, education, etc., do you think will be needed in the future? Will be needed in the future job market.
So outside of developers, I'll just speak to Calgary and Houston specifically for the energy industry. I think a lot of the skill sets are going to be related around how do I word it? Almost being like a translator for the industry. So you've got this group of developers building all these softwares, platform solutions, and then you've got this industry that has done it one way for decades. And a lot of the positions that are going to come up that aren't on the development side are going to be positions that help that transition and that translation of the status quo to the new way of doing it. So it's kind of vague, but so that is everything from the business development, the inside administration and account management, the business analysts, literally working with the devs to make sure that the stakeholders are getting what they're looking for. There's a major move into, once you get the usable data, essentially the transition is documents to data, then to information, right? So there's going to be a lot more roles around taking that usable data and then turning it into usable insight and usable information. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to be that bridge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. We got another question here from Jas. He's a recent grad. Congratulations, Jas. And he's finding it difficult with standing out when he doesn't have a ton of professional work experience. What are some good tips for this situation? He's been seeing postings also that say entry level, but they ask for 5 years of experience.
Okay,
what kind of tips would you give there?
Yeah, that's a mean recruiter that wrote entry level of 5 years of experience. That. Don't worry, you're not losing it. That's a little bit counterproductive. So, how do you stand out on tips? I mean, the industry, every industry is based off of. I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but credibility, right? And so And a new grad, the struggle a new grad has is how do you get the opportunity for someone to take a chance on you and give you that opportunity? A lot of times, many of you have probably always heard, oh, you got to know somebody to get in there, or you have to know somebody to get a job. That's not true. Referrals are so successful because the credibility that they bring. By being referred, that person that referred you, depending on the level of their relationship with the hiring manager, has just stamped you with credibility. So my advice is going back to what I talked about earlier. Do a ton of research. Stand out through your research. Stand out through how smart your questions are. Stand out by within the first 2-3 lines in your LinkedIn message or your email or your cover letter, speaking to how you have a passion for what the company's trying to do, and address the fact that you're a new grad, so you're not going to tick the boxes for experience, but where you lack that, you make up for in your passion about what the company's doing.
How about things like portfolios and volunteering? How much does that help? Or even like school projects, maybe.
School projects articulated properly can definitely stand out. I know that depending on the project, it can be very successful in using it as an example. So, I mean, even me personally, I definitely got my a couple of my jobs as I was a new grad by referencing a consulting project I did at Mount Royal. That was my main go-to for every behavioral question, was talking about that consulting project.
So if you're in school, these projects are not done just for no reason. You should always keep them in your back pocket. It does bring real world experience, so it's always good to have. Got another question from Reza. Do we need a certificate for a data analytics role? Do you think some online course like EDX works? So I'm not familiar with EDX. Maybe you are?
No, I don't do the hiring on that side, so I can't specifically speak to that. We don't look for the certificates, but I know some companies that is a requirement that they'll throw on there. Like I said earlier, we put out a couple tests, and we want to see the individual actually pass the test. So if someone says if they're an expert in this level, we send them the expert level test from Indeed and say, okay, well, let's do this. Everyone's got a different perspective, right? Like, I thought I was average at Excel, and then I met our data team, and I'm like, my level is actually, I can turn it on. Like, that might as well be my Excel skill level, is that I can actually open an Excel file compared to what the data team can do with these flat files. So everyone has a different perspective of how good they are. That's where I hope more and more employers will go to a level examination or skill testing, skill analysis, I guess is the right way to put it.
And just kind of on that wave of thinking, Katrina's asking, a number of postings are noting tech savvy. Tech savvy seems quite vague. So what does that mean to you?
So tech savvy to me is, you could carry a conversation around IoT versus DLT versus AI versus machine learning versus how does it all fit into digital transformation? So,
if you don't know those letters,
don't know what all those acronyms are, you might not be energy industry tech savvy. So, Internet of Things, distributed ledger technology, NoSQL, SQL, all those different things are tech savvy. Having a baseline of like the different platforms that are out there. So that to me is tech savvy. Some people, though, might even be like, you're not tech savvy unless you know all the different variances between a database and data repository and a data lake and big
And
spectrum.
it
I'm
really
sorry,
is.
that's a terrible answer, but there's a giant spectrum of that is a vague term, tech savvy. Um, for myself, I can speak to when we were hiring recently in Houston. Um, we wanted to know what I think the question was something around what digital transformation trends are you following right now in the industry, and then that that allowed us to see what the candidates were actually interested in. Are they actually following Harvard Business Review, talking about big data and analytics and so forth, or did they just stumble across our posting and go, oh well, they're hiring, so I'm interested.
Yeah, and it always comes back to what kind of job you're applying for, right? So, I mean, tech savvy, you do need to have that general baseline of all those acronyms, all those kinds of words, because those are basic in the tech industry. But then, if you're going, let's say, specifically for marketing, then you need to know lots of different lingo as well. Or even because, like, the construction industry has their own kind of terms, then you would need to know that. And even if it's business development, there's lots of different terms, and it's not necessarily just tech savvy. Now, if you're going just like a developer role, then you're going to need to learn all those different kinds of things. But yeah, there's a baseline that you should know, and then there's that next level for the job that you also need to know. Now, I'm just going to do this last question here. When you do recruitment, you focus on background or transferable skills with education more? So do you focus more on background or transferable skills with education?
We seek out transferable skills. So technically though, those transferable skills could come from the education or they could come from the background.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're skills first, not experience first. Um, and that's what's allowed us to build such a dynamic team, which is exciting to work with.
And that's a kind of the cool thing about the industry is that it's really flexible. You never know like what's going to be like what one company does in the tech industry is not necessarily what another company does. So being able to find those different things, talking with people like Jeff, talking with Kirsty, right? Talking with all those people in different companies and doing those informational interviews, connecting on LinkedIn, that's when you're going to find what's effective for that company that you're really looking for. So, I mean, Jeff, hey, thanks so much for coming in today. Really, really appreciate it. Let's say somebody has some questions for you. How can somebody connect with you?
Wide open on LinkedIn. So as I mentioned, I of those 6 requests a day, I usually accept at least 5. So, and then my final advice on that would be, if I get a request of, can you help me with my job search? That's just so open ended. If I get a request of, I'm really trying to find a position in this category or with this company, do you have any tips or tricks or introductions? I can instantly go yes or no. I have a way to help or I don't. But really vague, open ended, um, that's not always going to land well.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, if they were to look you up on LinkedIn, make sure you get the spelling right. Jeff, not like the 20 different other iterations of Jeff. You're not a G. You're not a G, right?
No, no,
And you're not related to Brendan Boyle, as you've mentioned.
no relation. Just the working relationship.
Perfect. Hey, Jeff, thanks so much for coming in again. And I mean, we did talk a lot about different things today. And one of those things was about a career fair. So, as I wanted to let you know about what's happening tomorrow, we have Career Boost 2020. That is still going on, and everything is going to be online. So, it's going to start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to have different speakers throughout the day. We've got a great lineup of people who are talking, some thought leaders, some community leaders who are going to give you lots of tips and tricks on how to improve your job search. And at the same time, from 11 o'clock to 1 p.m., we're going to have an employers fair. So we've got a handful of employers who are looking to hire. You know, Calgary's not shut down. There are people, there are companies who are looking to hire the right talent. Now, you can do this all online from the comfort of your own home and make that connection with these companies. and come listen to those talks throughout the entire day. We've got a great lineup. So check it out on mycareerconnection.ca. Now, today we also have a 2-for-1 deal. So coming up in 30 minutes, we've got another webinar with my friend Ed. So if you are a mature job seeker, then you'll want to hear what Ed has to say. He'll have some great tips for people who have lots of those skills and experience and have found themselves competing with the younger generations. But this is also for people who are just starting their careers too, maybe even newcomers to Canada, and anyone who is facing some kind of challenge in their job search. Now, let me put the info for the login in the chat box, and you can definitely log in that way. But that'll be starting at 11:30. So, Jeff, one more time, I just want to thank you so much for coming out today. Really appreciate all the insights and the information that you gave to us. My name is Michael Manzano, and I'm with Career Connection at Bow Valley College. And everyone, just stay safe, stay strong, because we're going to get through this together. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. You take care.